Usually, like when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this comforting expectation of pure precision, you know?
Oh, absolutely. It feels like engineering.
Right. You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points at it. There it is.
It's right there on the screen.
Uh,
Broken or not broken.
exactly. The problem is visible, it's categorized, and the solution, putting it in a cast, is universally understood.
You don't have to debate the existence of the fracture with the X-ray machine.
No, you don't. And we crave that kind of clarity, honestly. We want clear-cut solutions to clear-cut problems.
But I mean, that kind of binary clarity is a huge luxury.
Yeah.
The moment you step out of the physical realm and into personal development or human behavior or deep psychological change, that X-ray machine just completely disappears.
It really does. It's the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters.
For sure. The landscape of our own lives is incredibly murky.
Because when you realize you need to fix your life or, change your trajectory, the first agonizing hurdle is that there is no jagged white line showing you exactly what's broken.
Right. You can feel the pain.
You feel the misalignment in your daily routine or your mindset, but isolating the root cause is just notoriously difficult.
It's a deeply ambiguous process.
It usually takes years of therapy or endless journaling or consuming a mountain of self-help literature and just a lot of stumbling in the dark to figure out what the actual disease is, let alone the cure.
Yeah, and people often just treat the symptoms, They change jobs, they move cities.
They try a new morning routine.
Exactly, because there is no simple scan for a misaligned life. So the underlying architecture remains completely untouched while the supermetal wallpaper gets replaced.
That is such a good way to put it. But that raises a really interesting premise, though.
Oh.
What if someone claimed to have built the machine that could run that scan? The source material we have on the table for this deep dive makes an incredibly bold claim. It presents a hyper-specific 20-step blueprint that is supposedly designed to completely reform you into a new person.
And the timeline it advertises is, well, it isn't measured in years or decades.
No, it claims this can all be initiated in just 7 days.
The audacity of that timeline is what immediately grabs your attention, I think.
Absolutely.
The text does not mince words about what is required to achieve it, and it leans heavily into this very aggressive, almost confrontational methodology.
So our mission today is to take this document apart piece by piece. We are going to unpack this framework to understand exactly how it claims to rewire a person's life from the ground up.
Right, because when you first encounter the phrase, 20 steps to a new you in 7 days.
It sounds like a scam. The immediate natural instinct is deep skepticism.
Yeah, it sounds like a late-night infomercial or like a superficial internet challenge.
But when you actually read the specific steps, they are demanding, they are incredibly brutal, and they're built on some surprisingly profound psychological mechanisms.
We should probably clarify the scope of that 7-day claim right up front, though.
Yeah, good idea.
Because the title itself is playing a bit of a psychological trick. While it loudly promises a 7-day transformation, the actual commitments outlined within the 20 steps, they span intervals of 1 year, 2 years, 4 years.
And they stretch all the way to 6 years into the future.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's framing those initial 7 days not as the complete journey, but as the ignition sequence.
Right. It's the crucible where you forge the blueprint.
You spend a week building the architecture, establishing an unbreakable contract with your own subconscious, and then the execution of that blueprint requires a lifelong commitment.
The text is essentially demanding 7 days of uncompromising focus in exchange for dictating the next 6 years of your existence.
Wow.
The 7 days serve to shift your identity from a passive participant in your life to the active architect of it.
So the execution takes time. But that core identity shift, the realization that you are at the controls, is what supposedly happens in that first week.
Precisely.
Let's pull up step 1, because to even begin this process, you have to imagine stripping away absolutely everything you are doing right now.
Everything.
I want you, listening to this, to imagine embarking on step 1 right this very second. The text says, and I quote, "Grab a single blank piece of paper."
That's it.
That's it. You aren't downloading an app. You aren't opening a complex spreadsheet on your laptop. You are securing a physical medium.
And that insistence on an analog approach is incredibly deliberate.
Why do you think that is?
Well, it grounds the entire abstract concept of changing your life into a highly tactile, physical object. A laptop has tabs, it has notifications.
And endless avenues for escape.
Right. A blank piece of paper is a closed system. It offers no distraction and no utility other than what you physically force onto it with a pen.
It forces a confrontation. You are just staring at a blank space that demands to be filled.
Yeah, it really does.
And then we immediately hit step 2, which dictates the environment. You must find a quiet, peaceful place where absolutely no one knows you.
And you have to stay there for 3 to 4 hours.
Just you, the silence, and that single blank piece of paper.
The parameters of this isolation protocol are the foundation of everything that follows. It isn't merely about, finding a quiet room in your house while your family is downstairs.
Right.
The text explicitly mandates a location where no one knows you.
I imagine that's because if I lock myself in my home office, I'm still performing a role.
Exactly.
My identity is heavily anchored to the people around me. If my spouse is in the next room, I'm still subconsciously holding on to the identity of husband.
Or if the dog is barking, you're the owner.
Yeah. Our egos are constantly reinforced by the gaze and expectations of the people who recognize us.
The social identity is just a powerful gravitational force. We curate our behaviors, our habits, and even our internal monologues based on the roles we play for others.
Because the people around us expect us to be the person they have always known.
Right. So by physically removing yourself to a space where absolutely no one recognizes you, maybe a park in a different town or a rented room or an empty library.
You temporarily suspend that current self.
Exactly. You step outside the gravitational pull of your own social context.
You become a blank slate, mirroring the paper you're holding. You don't have to defend your ego because there is no audience to defend it against.
Yeah, that's perfectly put.
But the duration is what strikes me as the real hurdle here. 3 to 4 hours.
It's intense.
In our hyper-connected reality, 3 to 4 hours of pure isolation with only a blank piece of paper sounds like agony.
Oh, it is.
It's like putting your soul into quarantine. You have to isolate yourself from all external influences before you can diagnose what's actually going on inside.
Quarantine is the operative concept here. It operates like a forced detox.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you track the cognitive experience of sitting in an unfamiliar, quiet place with no phone and no distractions, the first 20 minutes are usually characterized by pure neurological panic.
Oh, the phantom phone vibrations.
Yes. The sudden, intense anxiety about an email you haven't answered or a chore you forgot to do. Your brain is essentially throwing a tantrum because you've cut off its supply of cheap dopamine.
The silence is just deafening.
Globally.
The protocol forces you to wait out those withdrawal symptoms. The first hour is consumed by the noise of your daily life slowly settling down. It's the mental static clearing.
And then what?
By the second hour, deep boredom sets in, which is a state most modern adults actively avoid at all costs.
Seriously, we will do anything to not be bored.
Right, but the text understands that boredom is the precursor to introspection. By the third and fourth hour, the mind has exhausted its superficial anxieties and has no choice but to turn inward.
It breaks down your defenses. I can see someone arguing that they could just do this audit in an hour if they focus really hard.
Sure, people always want the shortcut.
But if you rush it, you are only going to access the surface-level anxieties. You'll write down the things you've already admitted to yourself.
The 3 to 4 hour mandate ensures you become so stripped of stimulation that the raw, uncomfortable truths finally bubble up. The noise of self-deception is incredibly loud, and it takes hours of silence to starve it out.
The unflinching honesty required for the upcoming diagnostic steps is simply inaccessible when you're rushing or distracted. You just have to endure the quarantine before the operation could begin.
Which brings us to the operation itself. Once the silence has done its work, the pen hits the paper.
Right.
Steps 3 through 9 constitute a radical, systematic self-audit. It's this ascending ladder of introspection that starts deceptively simply. Step 3 asks, what are our strengths? Step 4 asks, what are our weaknesses?
And you write them down.
Right.
It begins with internal inherent traits.
Yeah.
It's asking you to inventory your baseline psychological capital. But notice the relentless insistence at the end of every single step.
Write it down on the paper.
Exactly.
That physical act of writing is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. If I just think about a weakness, say I'm prone to procrastination, my ego can blur the edges of that thought.
Oh, easily.
I can rationalize it. I can say I work better under pressure, or I'm just prioritizing other things.
Right, we all do that.
But when I am forced to physically write the words, I am deeply lazy and avoid hard work, it becomes a concrete artifact. It becomes undeniable data.
Writing forces abstract anxieties and vague vanities into a fixed reality. You cannot unsee what you have etched onto the page. The ego's ability to obscure the truth is neutralized by the ink.
And the audit expands outward from there. Step 5 asks what you like, what kinds of work you enjoy, and what special talents you possess.
Huh?
Step 6 is the inverse. What do you actively dislike? What kind of work do you have absolutely no aptitude for? What are you currently doing that brings you zero happiness?
The progression moves seamlessly from internal traits to external realities. It asks you to evaluate your friction points with the physical world.
It isn't just asking for complaints, then.
No, it's asking for an honest assessment of where your energy is being wasted or utilized poorly.
It's mapping the misalignments. And then step 7 asks what you like about your life today, right now. Step 8 asks what you dislike about your life today.
It shrinks the focus from general, lifelong preferences down to the immediate present.
The raw reality of your life on this exact Tuesday afternoon.
Exactly. By step 8, the paper is filled with a very stark, unvarnished profile of who you are in the exact state of your existence. You've diagnosed the symptoms,
Okay.
but the intervention doesn't happen yet. The process demands that you locate the origin of the disease.
Here's where it gets really interesting, I think. The document shifts into a completely different gear. Step 9 is the culmination of the audit, and it says, try to analyze yourself. Why has our life come to this point today? Try to recall past stories. Write it down on the paper.
You are essentially asked to become a historian of your own failures and successes.
Isn't there a risk here of just spiraling into regret? I mean, I look at step 9 and I immediately see a massive risk of rumination.
How so?
If you are sitting in an empty room, completely stripped of your social identity, staring at a list of your deepest flaws and the things you hate about your current life, and then you are told to trace every bad decision that led you there, that sounds like a recipe for a depressive spiral.
It does sound heavy.
It feels like you could easily cross the line from self-reflection into self-flagellation.
The language of the text provides a safeguard against that, though it requires strict discipline from the user. It uses the word analyze.
Analyze.
It asks you to look at past stories to understand the why. This implies a level of detachment. You are not writing a tragic memoir. You are doing forensic accounting on your own timeline.
Oh, wow. That's the perfect way to frame it. A forensic accountant doesn't sit at a desk weeping over a bankrupt ledger.
Right, they just trace the missing funds.
They balance the books to see exactly where the deficit originated.
Exactly. The text asserts that without this sterile, analytical mapping of the past, any future goals would be built on a faulty foundation.
Makes sense.
You cannot engineer a new trajectory without understanding the gravitational forces that pulled you off course in the first place.
Right.
If you audit your past and realize that your last 3 major career mistakes were driven by an unacknowledged fear of confrontation, you have suddenly identified the root code of your operating system.
You found the jagged white line on the X-ray.
There it is.
It's no longer a vague sense of professional dissatisfaction. It's a specific behavioral flaw fear of confrontation.
Yeah.
Once that historical audit is locked onto the paper, the diagnostic phase is over. The text abruptly pivots from looking backward to looking immediately forward, specifically targeting the ugliest things you just uncovered on that paper.
This transition leads directly into steps 10 through 12, which outline dual quests for internal and external change. The heavy lifting of the reform starts at step 10.
Step 10 demands that you choose your single worst habit, just one now, and commit to completely destroying it within 1 year.
The text defines this explicitly as your spiritual goal.
And it doesn't give lofty philosophical examples either. It is brutally grounded, it says. If you are a person who likes to gossip, within 1 year I will stop gossiping.
Right.
If you are someone who likes to speak badly, within 1 year I will stop speaking badly. If you are stingy, within 1 year I will stop being stingy.
The focus on a single, visible flaw is crucial here. Step 10 is entirely about subtraction. It requires deep, arduous internal work to dismantle a psychological mechanism you have likely utilized for decades.
Like the stinginess example.
Yes. Stinginess is rarely just about withholding money. It is a manifestation of a deep-seated fear of scarcity or a lack of trust in the world.
And gossiping.
Gossiping is often a tool used to mask insecurity by manufacturing cheap social power through the degradation of others.
Dismantling a coping mechanism like gossip is agonizing because it often means altering how you interact with your entire social circle. It's a massive structural repair.
It really is.
But if step 10 is about subtraction, step 11 provides an immediate counterbalance. Step 11 requires you to set a highly concrete, small life goal to achieve within the same year. This is the external goal, and it is entirely about addition.
It demands the acquisition of a new skill or the creation of a new asset. And the examples provided are purposefully mundane to contrast the heavy spiritual work of step 10.
Like what?
The text suggests goals like saving a specific measurable amount of money, learning to be a barber, or mastering how to cook 10 specific dishes.
So what does this all mean? It's like an RPG, a role-playing video game.
I like that analogy.
Yeah, step 10 is your main storyline quest, battling your inner demons. Step 11 is a side quest, learning to cook 10 dishes. You need both to level up.
Exactly. Step 12 articulates this exact duality. It states that combining the spiritual target with the tangible target ensures your life is no longer aimless.
The internal project heals the past. The external project builds the future.
Right. If you only do the heavy spiritual work, you risk becoming isolated and exhausted by your own introspection.
And if you only focus on external skills, you risk becoming highly competent but still fundamentally flawed in character.
Exactly.
The text also introduces a fascinating psychological tool here. It says, you must approach these goals, even the heavy spiritual dismantling of your worst flaw, like a game. It says, do it for fun, but be serious. Do it for real.
Gamification prevents the sheer weight of personal reform from crushing your momentum. If you view the eradication of your stinginess as a grim, punitive life sentence, your willpower will eventually fracture.
Right.
But if you view it as a challenge, a daily sport to catch your own mind before it reacts, a test of your own agility, it becomes engaging. You become a curious observer of your own mechanics.
Fun but serious. It's an active daily sport. But wait, there is a glaring question regarding the timeline here. The blueprint is sold as a 7-day reform.
True.
Yet steps 10 and 11 explicitly give you a 1-year deadline to destroy a habit and learn a skill. Isn't it contradictory to promise a new you in a week while giving a 12-month deadline for the actual work?
The apparent contradiction dissolves when you separate the concept of identity from execution.
Oh, I see.
The 7 days are not about completing the work. They are about establishing the unbreakable contract. The reform happens in the moment you shift from a passive victim of your circumstances to an active architect with a concrete plan.
You are reformed into a person who has a 1-year trajectory.
Exactly. The old version of you didn't have that paper. The new version does.
Yeah.
The execution of the plan will take 365 days, but the ideological shift takes 7.
You become the architect immediately, even if pouring the concrete takes a year. That makes perfect sense.
With those 1-year structural goals locked in, the blueprint refuses to let you rest. It forces your vision outward, asking you to stretch your imagination further than most people are comfortable with.
Step 13 demands a master time horizon.
Step 13 dictates. Try to write down what you want to happen in your life, how you want to see yourself. 2 years from now, 4 years from now, 6 years from now. What do you want to see happen to yourself? Write it down on the paper.
2, 4, and 6 years. The structured, even-numbered intervals really stand out to me. Usually when people are forced to set long-term goals, they default to 5 years or 10 years.
Yeah, that's the stance.
But those numbers have become so culturally ubiquitous that they've kind of lost their weight. They just mean someday in the vague future.
By demanding a staggered projection at years 2, 4, and 6, the source forces extreme precision. It forces you to build a progressive staircase.
Right.
You cannot vaguely state that you want to be financially independent in 6 years. You have to chart the exact stepping stones at year 2 and year 4 that will mathematically and logically result in that outcome at year 6.
You are plotting a highly specific trajectory based on the data you gathered in the historical audit of Step 9. We mapped out every misstep that led us to the present moment. Now we are mapping the exact coordinates of where we are going.
And again, this is all happening on the same physical piece of paper from Step 1.
The artifact you hold in your hands at this point is incredibly dense. It contains the unvarnished truth of your past flaws, your immediate 1-year internal and external missions, and a 6-year blueprint of your future existence.
It's a lot.
Yeah, isn't it overwhelming to plan 6 years out when we just audited how messed up the past was?
If we follow the logic of the framework, it actually shouldn't be overwhelming.
Why not?
Because you aren't guessing anymore.
Yeah.
The past is sterilized. The immediate year is broken down into actionable, gamified steps. The 2, 4, and 6-year marks are just natural, logical extensions of the momentum you are building in Step 10 and 11. It's a calculated projection.
It also stops at 6 years, which is interesting.
Yes. Anything beyond half a decade is likely too volatile to map concretely. But 6 years is more than enough time to undergo multiple iterations of self-reinvention.
That's true.
The person who completes the year 1 goals is fundamentally different from the person sitting in the quiet room holding the blank paper. By year 4, Your capacity for achievement will have compounded so significantly that your year 6 goals might actually seem conservative.
You are essentially planning a grand sweeping destiny. You are looking up the stars, mapping a half-decade of personal evolution.
And then,
Right. Then the text executes one of the most brilliant psychological pivots I've ever seen. Right after asking you to design your 6-year grand vision, it grabs you by the collar and violently yanks you back down to the most mundane, granular reality of your physical body.
yes, it moves into regaining biological sovereignty.
Steps 14 through 16.
They represent a masterstroke of systemic design. A grand 6-year vision is entirely useless if the physical vessel carrying that vision is chaotic.
Step 14 states, set a time to wake up and go to sleep. If you can do this, your life cycle will change to a better one. Remember that waking and sleeping times are the starting point of a good life.
It then offers a blunt warning. Don't wake up late. Don't sleep late.
We just mapped out the spiritual repair of our deepest flaws and projected our success half a decade into the future, and now the text is lecturing us about our bedtime.
It sounds trivial, but the logic is impeccable. Sleep is the containment wall for your ambitions. If you do not control the borders of your day, the exact moment your eyes open and the moment they close, you do not control the day itself. If the containment wall is leaking, all the energy you need for those 6-year goals just drains out into the dirt.
The text places immense spiritual weight on basic biology. It argues that controlling your time gives you abundant time to manage everything else.
Step 15 continues this lockdown by targeting food.
Yeah, it says, control your food. Train yourself to eat moderately. Eat only useful things. If you win over yourself in this matter, your mind will be much stronger.
It's vital to note how the text frames diet here. It doesn't talk about macronutrients or caloric deficits or achieving a certain aesthetic body type.
No, it frames diet purely as a mechanism for willpower. Eating moderately is presented as the simplest, most repetitive battleground you have with your own impulses.
You are confronted with the choice of what to consume multiple times a day. Every meal is a skirmish.
Right.
If you can consistently win those small biological skirmishes against your own cravings, you are actively fortifying the mental circuitry required for the larger battles outlined in Step 10. The discipline scales up.
So what does this all mean? Most people think of diet and exercise as the goals themselves, but this text treats them merely as mechanisms like tuning an instrument before a concert.
Exactly.
If you can't control what goes in your mouth or what time your eyes open, how can you control a 6-year destiny plan? If the strings are out of tune, it doesn't matter how beautiful the sheet music from Step 13 is, it's going to sound terrible.
That instrument analogy is perfectly realized in Step 16, which contains perhaps the most revelatory insight in the entire biological section.
Step 16 mandates daily exercise, offering an incredibly simple example. Jump rope in the house 100 times a day.
100 jumps on a rope takes what, maybe 2 minutes?
Physiologically, that is barely a warm-up. You aren't building muscle mass, you aren't pushing your cardiovascular system to its limits, and you certainly aren't burning a massive amount of calories.
Right.
If the goal was physical fitness, 100 jumps is vastly insufficient.
Because the goal is absolutely not physical fitness.
Wait, really?
Yes. The text explicitly reveals the underlying mechanism here. It says, this is not about physical health, but it is about emphasizing to your subconscious that your life is about to undergo a major change. Exercise is presented as a communication tool.
That reframing is staggering. You are using physical movement to speak to your subconscious mind.
The subconscious mind does not process abstract linguistic concepts like, I am currently undergoing a 6-year life transformation.
It doesn't speak English.
Exactly. It processes repetition, routine, and physical action. By forcing your body to engage in a non-negotiable physical action every single day, even something as brief as 2 minutes of jumping rope, you are sending a daily, undeniable physiological signal to your nervous system.
It's essentially tapping Morse code into your brain. Every time your feet hit the floor, the message is, we are in charge now. We dictate the action. We are in charge now.
You bypass the conscious mind's resistance by using the body as a transmitter.
And the text concludes Step 16 with a profound promise. It claims that through this simple daily physical communication, you will love yourself and feel tremendously better about yourself.
That self-love is not derived from vanity or looking better in a mirror. It is generated by self-trust.
Yeah.
When you give yourself a command and you consistently obey it without fail, you develop a deep structural respect for your own agency.
You prove to yourself that your word is law. Once the physical vessel is under strict control, Once you own your sleep, your intake, and your physical movement, the text moves to the highest and most difficult level of self-control. We graduate from the body to the mind.
Steps 17 and 18 outline the path to mental and verbal mastery.
Step 17 is concise, but the claim it makes is staggering. It requires 15 minutes of daily meditation.
And it does not sell meditation as a tool for peace or relaxation or stress reduction, which is the standard cultural packaging.
Right. The text asserts that meditation is vital because it will make you smarter and increase your intelligence exponentially.
Saying 15 minutes of sitting still will make you exponentially smarter is a heavy claim.
We usually associate intelligence with acquiring new information, studying, or solving complex equations. How does doing absolutely nothing increase cognitive capacity?
The intelligence the text refers to is not academic. It is the intelligence of profound awareness. It is the ability to perceive reality clearly, without the immediate distorting filter of your own reactive emotions. Meditation trains the mind to widen the gap between a stimulus and your reaction to it.
And this theoretical intelligence is immediately put to the test in Step 18, which is the practical application of that widened gap.
Sure.
Step 18 tackles speech.
It does.
Step 18 might be my favorite mechanism in the entire blueprint. It says, do not speak badly. But it doesn't leave it as a moral platitude. It gives you a highly specific psychological exercise.
The game.
Yeah, it says, think of it as a game. Enjoy seeing yourself want to speak badly, but being able to control yourself to be quiet. Practice listening to the voice of defilement in your mind and not following its orders. See what it is thinking, what it wants to say, and then you will be the boss of your own words.
This step demands a radical splitting of your consciousness. You are asked to practice conscious detachment from your own impulses.
You become the observer.
And the impulse becomes a separate entity, the voice of defilement. Let's say a coworker takes credit for your work. The immediate burning impulse arises, commanding you to insult them or gossip about them to someone else.
What's fascinating here is it's treating your bad impulses like a misbehaving pet. You just watch it act out, but you don't give it the treat of actually speaking the words.
That's a great way to look at it.
I picture it like a mutiny. Your bad impulses are the unruly crew on your ship, and they are constantly shouting terrible ideas. They want to fire the cannons at every passing boat.
Yes.
Step 18 is telling you to stand at the helm, listen to the crew screaming to fire, observe how badly they want to do it, and then simply refuse to give the order. You just watch them throw a tantrum. You don't suppress the feeling. You acknowledge it. You enjoy the absurdity of it, but you don't feed it by speaking the words out loud.
And that ability to stand at the helm and deny the mutiny, that is where the exponential intelligence from Step 17 is actually deployed.
Oh, I see the connection now.
The 15 minutes of daily meditation built the structural integrity of the ship, allowing you to withstand the internal shouting without immediately reacting. You prove to your subconscious in real-time social situations that you are the absolute boss of your output.
We have covered a monumental amount of psychological territory.
You really have.
We audited the deep past, engineered a 6-year trajectory, locked down our biological borders, established a physical signaling system to the subconscious, and staged a successful mutiny against our own inner monologue.
And now, the final 2 steps of the document bring this massive invisible architecture into tangible, daily reality. Steps 19 and 20, the outer vessel and the subconscious contract.
Step 19 briefly brings the focus back to the physical form, but from an aesthetic angle rather than a biological one. It mandates taking care of your physical appearance, your body, your clothes, ensuring you don't let yourself go. It requires grooming to become a deliberate habit.
It's crucial that the text anticipates the immediate criticism here. It explicitly clarifies this is not about attachment.
It knows people will view caring about clothes as superficial vanity, especially after doing deep spiritual work like conquering the voice of defilement.
It defends grooming as an outward manifestation of an inward change. It is about generating a state of health, confidence, and freshness.
Right.
If you have spent the last 18 steps renovating the internal architecture of your mind, Step 19 is about ensuring the exterior reflects that respect. It isn't for other people's gaze. It is an act of self-respect. You are literally dressing the person you have decided to become.
It signals to yourself that the operation was a success. Which brings us to the grand finale, the mechanism that locks the entire blueprint into reality. Step 20.
The most important step.
This step demands that absolutely everything recommended in the previous 19 steps must be synthesized and written down into a highly specific daily schedule. a timetable.
And this is where the text delivers its ultimate, uncompromising thesis.
Yeah.
It issues a severe warning to the reader.
What does it say?
It says, do not just think about it. Do not just think and let it end. Do not think that you already know and understand. Because if you think like that, everything will go back to the way it was.
Wow. That line is a devastating critique of the entire modern self-help industry. It attacks the exact loop most of us are stuck in.
Completely.
We listen to hours of audio, we read dense books, we nod along and say, wow, that is profound, I completely understand that concept, and then we close the book, go to sleep, and wake up the next day doing the exact same destructive behaviors.
Thinking creates the illusion of progress without demanding any actual friction.
Yeah.
Thinking is the enemy of sustained change, because thinking relies entirely on conscious motivation. And, as any behavioral psychologist will note, conscious motivation is a highly finite resource. It is exhausted by mid-afternoon.
So what's the text solution?
The daily life table. State clearly what you will do each day, what time, how long. And it explains the precise neurological mechanism behind this. When you start writing, writing will embed these things into your subconscious. The importance lies here. When everything goes into your subconscious, you will start doing it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this whole 20-step process is actually a covert operation to hack your own subconscious mind.
That's exactly what it is.
It utilizes the silent quarantine of step 2, the agonizing physical writing of your flaws in step 4, the jumping ropes of step 16, the enforced silence of step 18, and finally this rigid, written timetable in step 20 as tools to bypass your conscious resistance. It's rewriting your core programming from the ground up.
You can map the exact chain reaction the text relies upon. First, writing the timetable embeds the plan into the subconscious.
Okay.
Second, once embedded, the subconscious drives the action automatically, without requiring daily reserves of willpower. Third, consistent action inevitably alters the material reality of your life.
And fourth,
changing your life through deliberate, calculated design elevates you to the status of the true owner of your life.
the true owner of your life, that is such a heavy, resonant phrase.
Isn't it?
The implication is staggering. If we are not actively executing a framework like this, we are merely renting our lives. We are squatting in our own existence, letting external circumstances, algorithms, and the expectations of other people dictate our trajectory.
Sadly, that's true for a lot of people.
But when you step back and look at the architecture of these 20 steps, it really is a marvel. We started in a quiet room, completely empty-handed except for a blank piece of paper, wrestling with the phantom vibrations of a smartphone. And we end with a fully scheduled, conscious, physically controlled, and mentally mastered life.
It is a comprehensive ideological and practical framework. It seamlessly connects the most abstract spiritual goals, like dismantling a lifelong habit of stinginess, to the most granular, mundane details of what time your alarm goes off and how many times you jump a rope in your living room.
Let's briefly recap this journey for the listener, because the sheer volume of behavioral change demanded here is immense.
Sure.
You begin by forcing yourself into complete isolation, starving your brain of distraction until the ego drops its defenses. You use that clarity to confront the unvarnished truth of your past and map the friction of your present. You commit to a spiritual goal to destroy your ugliest flaw and a practical goal to build a tangible skill.
Then you look to the future.
Right. You map a staggered, logical 6-year trajectory. You build a containment wall by locking down your sleep and diet. You use basic physical movement to signal your brain that a new regime is in charge.
You master the mind.
Exactly. You use meditation to expand the gap between impulse and reaction, treating your speech as a conscious game of restraint. You groom yourself with intention. And finally, you distill every single ounce of that philosophy into a rigid, written daily contract.
The defining characteristic of this text, and the point that must be emphasized for you, the listener, is its absolute intolerance for passivity.
It demands action.
The power of this blueprint does not lie in its philosophy. There are countless philosophies available. The power lies entirely in its relentless demand for physical compliance. It is a manual.
And a manual is useless unless you pick up the tools.
Exactly. The transformation it promises cannot be accessed through intellectual agreement. It must be paid for with action.
The text guarantees that if you write this down and actually execute it, the compounding results will make you the true owner of your life. If your current existence feels like that murky, ambiguous X-ray we talked about at the beginning, this blueprint offers you the machine to finally find the break and set the bone.
But it requires you to be the surgeon and the patient simultaneously. It requires you to make the cut.
The procedure is undeniably arduous, but the architecture is sound provided the steps are followed without compromise,
It is.
which leaves us with a final lingering thought experiment for you to carry into your day. A question extrapolated directly from the ultimate promise of this blueprint.
Let's hear it.
If you are not currently controlling your schedule, auditing your words, and deliberately engineering your habits through a conscious framework, who or what is actually owning your life right now?
That is the uncomfortable truth at the absolute center of this entire process.
It is the question that demands an answer. But as the source text insists in its parting words, taking that ownership back doesn't have to be a grim punishment. It is the ultimate game.
A game you can win.
So we'll leave you with the exact sign-off from the blueprint itself. Have fun with your life and happiness with your transformation.